Welcome to the NWR Resources Virtual Series. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and next up we have Mamba Exploration. ASX code is M24. They're a West Australian-focused exploration company with 4 100% owned, geographically diverse projects, which are going to provide them with year-round access. Joining us today to tell us the story is their Managing Director, my old friend, Mike Dunbar. Mike, welcome, and over to you.
Great, thanks, Kerry, for that introduction. And yes, it's been a long while, so it's good to see you again. Thanks, NWR and the team for giving me the opportunity to present Mamba and what we've been up to and what we're planning to do over the next little while. We've got quite an interesting set of projects that we've been putting together since we formed the company around about a year ago and listed on the ASX in February of this year. So as Kerry mentioned, we've got 4 projects in Western Australia, 4 main project areas that do provide year-round news flow and access. So the Darling Range project has been one of the market darling areas, if you like. We've got 4 projects, 4 tenements in that area, which is just outside of Perth and includes 6 kilometre long ultramafic package of rocks in the Black Hills tenement package, where we've already done airborne EM, identified a number of targets, and we're now moving towards ground-based EM this quarter and drilling this quarter. The Kalyap Creek project in the Great Southern of Western Australia is a gold project, which has got some very significant historical drill intersections. And they really haven't been followed up since they were drilled in the mid to late 1980s. So that's another project area. And if you like, they're the 2 projects that we can work during the summer months or the cricket season, as if you like. The 2 northern projects, the Ashburton Gold project, funnily enough, in the Ashburton of Western Australia, where there's been some historical exploration, not a great deal, and these are more gold-focused projects, which we are currently doing auger sampling on those at the moment. And finally, the Kimberley project up in the Kimberley region of Western Australia, it really is split up into 4 sub-projects, but we just lump it up for ease of presenting, just lump it into one. Very, very large tenement package up there with some very, very interesting and significant copper and silver prospects that we've identified, which we have literally just come back from the field assessing those and now moving those assets forward as well. So if I go through a little bit about the company and who we are and where we're at. I'm Mike Dunbar, the Managing Director. Also on the board is Justin Boyleston, our Chairman, and Simon Andrew. We've all got around 25 years experience in the industry, ranging from myself being a geologist, exploring, discovering and developing projects from nickel projects, gold projects, and the like. And our Company Secretary, Alan Armstrong, who also got a lot of experience in the junior resources space. Gary Dick is our senior geologist as well. So we've got a good team. And the capital structure itself, very tightly held. It's all made up from effectively the original vendors of the assets that put all the projects together, like as I mentioned, late last year, and the IPO shareholders holding around 46% of the company. We've got just under 61 million shares on issue, but only 37 of those are tradable. The rest are all held in escrow for 2 years, and that's from the vendors and the board and management team. So very tightly held and trading around 18 to 20 cents thereabouts, giving us with our current cash balance of at the end of last quarter, just under $6 million, giving us a very low EV compared to our peers in any of the areas we're working in. Moving to the projects, and really, I've been a geologist, I'll bore people with the projects more than I will with the corporate structure, and that's really the space we're in at the moment. And I'll go through each of them one by one. So you can see a map of Western Australia on the left-hand side there. The Darling Range project, just outside of Perth. There are 4 tenements we have in that area. in the Julimar region. Now, they cover around 100 square kilometres, and we've, as I mentioned earlier, identified coincident geochemical, geological and geophysical targets at Black Hills, and identified up to 7 EM conductors at Black Hills and 10 in that tenement package total. So we've got a fair bit of work to do in that area. Zooming in on it and a little bit more, I'm sure a number of listeners would be familiar with the Julimar discovery that was made by Chalice around 18 months ago now, just outside of Perth. Their project is around 30 kilometres from our Black Hills project. They've got in total around 26 kilometres of strike length. However, all but 1,800 metres of that is inside a state forest, creating all kinds of land access challenges that they're working through, and they will work through. However, where we are, we're in open farmland, and so it's a lot easier to get land access and work through that area. Zooming in on the magnetics of our project on the left-hand side here, the Black Hills tenement package, we've identified 6 kilometre long trend. And to put it into perspective, the scale of what we have compared to Julimar, they've tested the Gondoville intrusion and only got access to around 1,800 metres of that intrusion so far. At exactly the same scale, the intrusion that we've identified in the northern end of our trend really does look quite comparable. Geologically very interesting, as well as geophysically. So a really interesting target area. Zooming in on the Black Hills target in particular, and really the key is for us has been to de-risk all of our targets as best we can before we go through drilling them. So what we've done at the Black Hills target area is we've identified, as I mentioned, the 6 kilometre long trend of geochemical trend with 10 ppb, 2 PGE anomaly that extends throughout the project. We then have looked at the geology of the area and mapped ultramafics and mapped and sampled ultramafics that do confirm that trend, and the geochemical and geological trend is coincident. And it really has highlighted from the work that we've done and the mapping and the sampling we've done, this northern area as an area of particular interest. The rocks, it's a gabbronorite, an ultramafic rock, and we have seen some sulfides in those rocks. So we do know that that system is fertile. The only question really now is it mineralised? That's really where the next phase of exploration that we're going through will determine. So looking after we've done the geological mapping and looked at the aeromagnetics, we then flew airborne EM and identified 7 coincident airborne EM plates and modelled those plates that are also all coincident with that ultramafic trend, which you can see in yellow there. And again, it highlights that northern target area. That's the area of particular focus for us, and that's the area where we'll be doing ground EM this quarter, and we'll be drilling late this quarter as well. Most likely when this, as I mentioned earlier, this is a farming cropping area. We'll wait until the crops have been harvested in November and aiming to be drilling that in late November, December of this year. So a really interesting target area, and certainly stacks up geologically and geochemically with other targets in this region. So we sit effectively between Pursuit to the east, Chalice to the west, and Caspin to the north, and Mandrake to the south. So we're certainly in the right address, and we've got the right rocks and the right signatures that we're working through at the moment. So it's looking very, very encouraging. Moving to one of our other projects, the Kalyap Creek Gold Project. As I mentioned, that's in the Great Southern of Western Australia. It's not the normal stock standard Archean gold system. It is in high-grade metamorphic rocks, similar to what the Albany-Fraser tectonic zone, which hosts Tropicana and Nova nickel deposits, but also high-grade metamorphic rocks similar to the Glenberg project up in the Ashburton and Gascoyne, which I used to work on. We've got 2 granted exploration licenses down there covering, as I mentioned, a high-grade metamorphic cratonic margin geological setting. I know that's a lot of big words and to confuse people, but basically it's not the stock standard greenstone that you see in and around Kalgoorlie. These are very different systems and can be very, very large systems. So far, we've identified a 4-kilometre long soil anomaly and have got soil samples up to 1.9 grams and rock chips over 8 grams with very limited exploration and drilling that's been undertaken. Zooming in on the project, which is, as I mentioned, in the Great Southern near Albany, we've got a 4-kilometre long trend. The northern prospect has had some historical working on it, and the drilling that has been done there suggests a relatively narrow but slightly higher grade system through that area. Normally you see 1 metre, 5 to maybe 8 grams of gold, but relatively narrow. The central area, slightly wider zones of mineralisation and slightly lower grade, so 2 to 4 metres at around about 2 to 3 grams. But the area we're particularly interested in is an area that hasn't been drilled at all since 1980s, and that's in the Southern Prospect area. Down in the Southern Prospect, you've got far wider zones of alteration and mineralisation and deeper weathering, which really adds to our encouragement of this area because we're seeing more alteration and it's more pervasive, which really you do want to see that broader zones of mineralisation. So zooming in on the Southern Prospect area, there was some historical soil sampling done, and you can see that in the coloured areas here. We then wanted to validate that sampling, so we've done our own soil sampling over the top, and I've identified 2 sub-parallel trends. The southern one extends for 1,400 metres, and the peak soil anomaly of 1.9 grams just to the east of the southern workings. Now, to put it into perspective, the southern workings have been drilled for around about 140 metres of strike length, and we've now identified that trend continues for over 1,400 metres. So clearly there's a lot of additional exploration and drilling to be done, and certainly we're intending to do additional follow-up soil sampling and drilling there this quarter. We've also identified a northern trend, which again is around 1,400 metres long. That's never been drilled, and we'll be drilling that this quarter as well. And what you can see there is up to 1.7 grams of gold in that soil sampling. So certainly not the standard types of grades you see in soil sampling. Normally you'd be lucky if you're seeing 30 to 40 ppb, and we're seeing order of magnitudes greater than that in our soil sampling. So it's very significant systems down in the Great Southern. So zooming in on having a look at the historical drilling that was done there, you can see, excuse me, some broad zones of mineralisation, 9 metres at just under 5 grams, 5 at 4.8, 9 at 2.6, all very, very shallow, have never been followed up since the 80s, and have never been chased below 25 metres vertically. So it's screaming to be drilled. Why hasn't this been drilled in the past, people may ask? And really the reason is it sits between farmland to the west and a national park to the east. And so there's additional hurdles. It's not in a national park, it's in a gap, if you like, between the farmland and the national park. And it's effectively fallen between the cracks from historical exploration. And we've got to do additional flora and fauna surveys that we've now completed. We completed those, had to wait until spring to do those, and we've now done those and submitted those reports to the Mines Department to allow us to start drilling. Now we're expecting that permitting to come through in the next few weeks, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll be drilling this area this quarter as well. So a pretty exciting area, an exciting time for us, given this has been a forgotten gold region for so long. Moving up to the Ashburton Gold project, our third project, and this is the first of our winter projects, if you like. So we've got the cricket season of projects to the south in Darling Range and Kalyap Creek, and the football season or rugby season, depending in which state you're sitting in, to the north. So the Ashburton Gold project, we can work for an extended period, but it does get a little bit warm, mid-40s to high 40s in summer. So we try and avoid sending our field teams into that kind of environment for camping. So we work this in the winter months. It's an early stage exploration project, but again, similar to the high-grade metamorphic terrain, similar to the Glenberg Gold project, which is around about 1 million ounces. What you need to see in these types of systems is very large structures to provide the plumbing, if you like, from the deep crust up to surface to have that mineralisation come up. And that's certainly what we see in the Ashburton projects. So we've got 3 large tenements in the area. There's been limited exploration done, particularly most of the exploration has actually been done in one small area at Linden, and I'll show you that in a moment, where rock chip sampling of over 40 grams was recovered from a shallow pit that was dug, and drilling of up to 4 metres at 21 grams, for example. That's a very significant and has never really been followed up properly since that was drilled. So there's certainly some more work to do in that area. So just zooming in on Ashburton itself, what we can see here is a geology map, and the magnetics is behind it. But what you want to see is you want to have the targets near large regional structures. And you can see these large regional structures run up through our project. So the southern project here at Osborne Well, you've got a large regional structure running straight through it. And then further north, when you get to the Linden area, which is this northern area, you can see those large structures horsetail to multiple sub-parallel structures. That's exactly the style and structural setting you want to see for these types of gold deposits to be occurring, because you want to see multiple plumbing sources and multiple structures to test. So zooming in on this area here, that's the area at Linden where there has been some historical work. But when I say some historical work, a sum total of 9 RC holes have been drilled in that area. So it really has not been properly tested at all. And there's been, other than that, only stream sediment sampling and very, very little surface sampling been undertaken. So zooming in at Linden and the northern workings in particular, there was a shallow pit dug down to about 6 or 7 metres and dry blowing processing of the gold ore. There's no records from the Miners Department or anyone as to how much came out, but certainly the grades that were extracted out of the main lode were pretty substantial in the pit, up to 46 grams per tonne that has been sampled in the base of that pit. And the drilling that's been done below it shows 3 sub-parallel lodes. The southern one, the deeper one, or the main lode, is the main priority area, but you've got 2 other lodes just to up in the hanging wall of the main lode, which are also very mineralised. So, as I mentioned, only around 9 drill holes have ever been drilled here, RC holes, but no drilling along strike. Now, this area, and why we continue to explore this area, and why aren't we just coming in with an RC rig, is we need to understand the overall package and the overall system before we start blazing away with an RC drill rig. So what we've done deliberately is we've stepped back from doing that RC drilling, and we're doing auger geochemical sampling over the entire trend. So we're testing around about 4 kilometres of that strike with very close spaced auger sampling to confirm that we're going to be testing the best part of that system. It's all well and good to come into around a shallow pit like this and punch some more holes in and get some what I would expect to be spectacular grades. But if we're not testing the best system or best part of that system, we are really not spending our money as wisely as we could. So by stepping back to do the broad geochemical sampling first, and then stepping forward into the more expensive RC drilling is, we believe, the best way forward. So we're doing that drilling now. I'd expect the first results to come back in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And that's an ongoing program that will continue for about another 4 weeks until we've finished that program. So we're still actively drilling in this area. And with grades like this, there's certainly very, very good potential. So moving to the last of the project areas I mentioned, and that's the Kimberley Gold project, Kimberley project to the north. It really is, as I mentioned, broken up into 4 sub-projects, if you like. The Speewah East project north of the Argyle mine, the Spring Creek project, which is around 16 kilometres from Savannah nickel mine, the Ruby Plains prospect, which is near to the east of the Nicholson gold mine. Now, Spring Creek and Ruby Plains are more nickel, copper, PGE, mafic intrusive styles of targets we're looking for. They're similar to Savannah or Savannah North. Excuse me, well, Copper Flats is a different beast. And I really spend most of my time, well, all of my time talking about Copper Flats rather than the other ones, because Copper Flats is clearly the priority for us in the Kimberley at the moment. Zooming in on Copper Flats itself, of the 100, if I go back one slide, sorry, you can see the Copper Flats and Ruby Plains extends for around 190 kilometres. So it's a very, very large tenement package. I think it's surprising that it sat there idle for as long as it has. So zooming in on Copper Flats, that extends for around 100 kilometres, only 100 kilometres. So it's a pretty sizable package. Early exploration stage project, but it's really prospective, and we identified some sedimentary hosted copper silver occurrences in the area, and it's got a lot of potential for very large copper silver system. There has been some significant trenching and geochemical sampling in that area, and very, very limited drilling. Only a handful of holes have really been drilled. And I believe they've been testing one style of mineralisation, but not necessarily the style that's going to be best suited to building or a large discovery. And so that's really what we're looking for. Zooming on it a little bit further, and I suppose, if you like, walking through the conceptual exploration model we're working to, this is a sedimentary hosted system. So you've got the sediments in the top of this image, and then you've got the volcanics, lower Cambrian age volcanics, the Outram volcanics underneath. And where you want to be in these systems is, you don't want to be in the middle of the basin, you want to be on the edge. So you want to be on the edge for a number of reasons. That's because as the basin has dewatered, it's moving the fluids with metals out of the system and out of the basin itself. So you want to be nearer the edge. And so there are a number of targets you want to see, but if I go through them from right to left, the sand volcano really is the surface expression of some of these structures that have come to surface and have provided so much fluid flow that you're actually having milling up of the host rock, and as a result of that, you get these sand accumulations at surface, or sand volcanoes as they're termed. That's what's effectively been drill tested previously. Now, from the field exploration trip that Gary and myself did a few weeks ago, we believe that these are probably relatively small targets and relatively smaller target horizons. Easy to identify because you can just do them from aerial photography, but probably not the large style of system that we're after. If coming a little bit further to the left on that image, you can see a number of growth faults or faults coming up from deep down and providing fluid pathways up towards the surface. And these targets really are the ones we are most interested in. We've managed to identify them from a number of those from reprocessed magnetics. You can also see a number of other styles of mineralisation, strata-bound copper-silver mineralisation. We've identified those as well, and some flow-top breccia style. So at the base of the Headley limestone coming up, you can see some potential there. So we see all of these having potential. Zooming in on, and really this is why our tenement package covers that part of the basin. So zooming in on Copper Flats and why we like the area, you can see this is a radiometric image, and you can see
we're running out of time, just to let you know.
Yeah, no worries. I've only got a few slides to go.
Okay.
A radiometric image here in dark blue, that's the Headley limestone. And what you can see is the historical work that's been done. Channel sampling of up to 7 to 8% copper, and some very, very significant silver occurrences as well. So really very, very large and very high grade. They are supergene enriched, so there are some, those grades may not persist to depth, but really it's a great indication of a really big system when you start seeing silver grades in particular, and the copper grades. So zooming in on that, and so we saw the radiometric image, and that shows the Headley limestone and allows us to map that out. We've then identified these growth structures from their reprocessed magnetics, and we've identified a number of growth faults and structures running through our tenement package. These have been confirmed from field validations that we've undertaken, as well as we've identified a number of new ones as well. Zooming in a little bit further, you can see where these growth faults in white cross-cut the area. The blue is the base of the basin, and that is the contact between the Headley limestone and the Outram volcanics. That's another horizon. And you can see some very, very interesting rock chip samples we took from Area 5, historical sampling there, and old workings here. So some very interesting copper mineralisation in both of those areas. What I can't show you is the rock chip samples we've collected from the new targets we've identified at Forest Creek, mules and donkeys in particular. Now, we've got those assays, those samples in the lab at the moment, and as soon as we've got those results back, then I'll be able to share with everybody what those new targets look like. So looking through the planned exploration, I've mentioned most of this as we've gone through the presentation, but what you're looking at is a lot of news flow coming. So in the Darling Range, we'll be doing ground EM this quarter, and the initial drill program into that target area in December as well. In the Great Southern, you've seen that we'll do some follow-up soil sampling and RC drilling of those targets this quarter as well. Ashburton, the auger drilling is underway and assays in 3 to 4 weeks. And in the Kimberley, a number of projects, a number of areas to work on in the next quarter and beyond, including getting assays back from those newly discovered targets we've found at Donkeys, Mules and Forest Creek, as well as ongoing heritage negotiations with the Kimberley Land Council, and then that will lead to tenement grant and more activity and airborne EM early next year. So thanks very much for everybody's attention, and hopefully I provided some input into and information as to what Mamba is, what we're up to, and where we're going. Thanks very much.
Mike Dunbar, Managing Director of Mamba Exploration, thank you so much for joining us today. Plenty of news flow to come, ladies and gentlemen. And as I said at the start, the ASX code is M24. Watch this space. Plenty of news to come. Thanks very much, Mike.
Thanks very much, Kerry. Thanks very much for listening.